viewers. Today we will learn about the topic entitled Understanding Ecofeminism, the Thoughts and Practices, and a critical retrospection of the writings of Vandana Shiva. The objective of this lecture are as follows. Firstly, we will understand the meaning and the origin of the term ecofeminism. Then we will analyze the various domains and concepts that are related to ecofeminism. And lastly, we will study about the critical reviews of an Indian ecofeminist, Vandana Shiva. So we will start with the most basic question. What is ecofeminism? Ecofeminism, also known as ecological feminism, is a branch of feminism that examines the connections between woman and nature. Its name was coined by a French feminist, Françoise de Eubon, in 1974. Ecofeminism uses the basic feminist tenets of equality between genders, a revaluing of non-patriarchal or non-linear structures, and a view of the world that respects organic processes, holistic connections, and the merits of intuition and collaboration. Ecofeminism adds both a commitment to the environment and an awareness of the associations made between woman and nature to these notions. Specifically, this philosophy emphasizes the ways both nature and woman are treated by the patriarchal or male-centered or male-dominant society. Ecofeminists examine the effect of gender categories in order to demonstrate the ways in which social norms exert unjust dominance over woman and nature. The philosophy also contends that those norms lead to an incomplete view of the world, and its practitioners advocate an alternative worldview that values the earth as sacred, recognizes humanity's dependency on the natural world, and embraces all life as valuable. Ecofeminism refers to a diverse range of environmental activity. It is also a critique of the dominant philosophical attitudes that underlie the Western society's approach to nature and the natural world. It arose from what had hitherto been two different social movements, the environmental movement and the women's movement, and within the latter, it draws especially upon the women's peace and spirituality movements. The starting point of ecofeminism is the belief that the current environmental crisis is the outcome of the manner in which we understand and thus relate to each other as well as to the natural world. Drawing upon the feminist theory of patriarchy as well as on insights gained from environmental activism, ecofeminists argue that a common belief system rooted in the principle of domination underlies modern attitudes towards both woman and nature. The concerns that are related to ecofeminism is our next topic. Ecofeminism is also a practical response to the reality of environmental degradation. In particular, it is concerned with the ways in which the degradation of the natural environment impacts upon the daily lives of women, especially in the third world. Ecofeminists wish to develop a new way of living with the world which integrates personal lifestyle, political practice, and economic activity into a more spiritually coherent and environmentally sustainable whole. Ecofeminism is thus a philosophical critique as well as a political engagement. Both of these elements draw upon and inform each other, and thus both have contributed in an interconnected way to the development of ecofeminism. For the purposes of analysis, however, we will examine each of them separately beginning with a discussion of ecofeminism as a philosophical critique. The philosophical critique of ecofeminism. The modern ecofeminist movement was born out of a series of conferences and workshops held in the United States by a coalition of academic and professional women during the late 1970s and early 1980s. They met to discuss the ways in which feminism and environmentalism might be combined to promote respect for women and the natural world, and were motivated by the notion that a long historical precedent of associating woman with nature had led to the oppression of both. They noted that woman and nature were often depicted as chaotic, irrational, and in need of control, while men were frequently characterized as rational, ordered, and thus capable of directing the use and development of woman and nature. Ecofeminists contend that this arrangement results in a hierarchical structure which grants power to men and allows for the exploitation of woman and nature, particularly as the two are associated with one another. Thus, early ecofeminists determined that solving the predicament of either constituency would require undoing the social status of both. Early work on ecofeminism consisted largely of first documenting historical connections between women and the environment, and then looking for ways to sever those connections. One founder of ecofeminism, theologian Rosemary Ruder, insisted that all women must acknowledge and work to end the domination of nature if they were to work towards their own liberation. She urged women and environmentalists to work together to end patriarchal systems that privilege hierarchies, control, and unequal socio-economic relations. Ruder's challenge was taken up by feminist scholars and activists who began critiquing not only ecological theories that overlooked the effect of patriarchal systems, but also feminist theories that did not interrogate the relationship between woman and nature as well. Popularization of ecofeminism was mainly due to Nestra King. By the late 1980s, ecofeminism had grown out of its large academic environment and became a popular movement. Many scholars cite that the feminist theorist Nestra King has the cause of that popularization. In 1987, King wrote an article entitled "What is Ecofeminism?" that appeared in The Nation. There she challenged all Americans to consider the ways in which their belief systems allow for the exploitative use of the earth and the further oppression of women. With the help of King's article, the concept of ecofeminism grew both in support and philosophical scope. Now, since we have learnt about the basic definition of ecofeminism, origin, and the concerns, so we will now go for a quiz. In which year the term ecofeminism was coined? The options are A. 1970, B. 1974, C. 1972, and D. 1977. Yes, the correct answer is 1974. Nature has always been defined as feminine. Ecofeminist theory asserts that capitalism reflects only paternalistic and patriarchal values. This notion implies that the effects of capitalism have not benefited women and has led to a harmful split between nature and culture. In the 1970s, early ecofeminists discussed that the split can only be healed by the feminine instinct for nurture and the holistic knowledge of nature's processes. How is nature feminine? Since several ecofeminist scholars have made the distinction that it is not because women are female or feminine that they relate to nature, but because of their similar states of oppression by the same male dominant forces. The marginalization is evident in the gendered language used to describe nature, such as Mother Earth or Mother Nature, and the animalized language used to describe women in derogatory terms. Some discourses link women specifically to the environment because of their traditional social role as a nurturer and caregiver. Ecofeminists, following in this line of thought, believe that these connections are illustrated through the coherence of socially labeled values associated with femininity, such as nurturing, which are present both among women and nature. Alternatively, ecofeminists and activists Vandana Shiva wrote that women have a special connection to the environment through their daily interactions and that this connection has been underestimated. She makes the point that these alternative modes of knowing, which are oriented to the social benefits and sustenance needs, are not recognized by the capitalist reductionist paradigm because it fails to perceive the interconnectedness of nature or the connection of women's lives, work, and knowledge with the creation of wealth. Shiva blames this failure on the Western patriarchal perceptions of development and progress. According to Shiva, patriarchy has labeled women, nature, and other groups not growing the economy as unproductive. Similarly, Australian ecofeminist Ariel Saleh deepens this materialist ecofeminist approach in dialogue with green politics, eco-socialism, genetic engineering, and climate policy. Now we will study about the various concepts of ecofeminism. As ecofeminism continued to develop, it witnessed the first of several splinterings. By the late 1980s, ecofeminism had begun to branch out into two distinct schools of thought: radical and cultural ecofeminism. Radical ecofeminists contend that the dominant patriarchal society equates nature and woman in order to degrade both. To that end, radical ecofeminism builds on the assertion of early ecofeminists that one must study patriarchal domination with an eye towards ending the associations between woman and nature. Cultural ecofeminists, on the other hand, encourages an association between woman and the environment. They contend that women have a more intimate relationship with nature because of their gender role. As a result, cultural ecofeminists believe that such associations allow women to be more sensitive to the sanctity and degradation of the environment. What we have seen is that ecofeminism is now subdivided into four main groups. The first concept is the modern science ecofeminism. These ecofeminists have pondered over modern science and its acceptance as a universal and value-free system. They view the dominant stream of modern science not as objective science, but as a projection of Western men's values. The privilege of determining what is considered scientific knowledge and its usage has been controlled by men, and for most part of history, restricted to men. The list includes examples of the medicalization of childbirth and the industrialization of plant reproduction. A common claim within ecofeminist literature is that patriarchal structures justify their dominance through binary opposition. These include but are not limited to heaven or earth, mind or body, male or female, human or animal, spirit or matter, culture or nature, and white or non-white. The next concept is vegetarian ecofeminism. To animal rights has established vegetarian ecofeminism, which asserts that omitting the oppression of animals from feminist and ecofeminist analysis is inconsistent with the activist and philosophical foundations of both feminism as a movement to end all forms of oppression and ecofeminism. It puts into practice personal is political, as many ecofeminists believe that meat eating is a form of patriarchal domination, which suggests a link between male violence and a meat-based diet. During a 1995 interview with On the Issues, Carol J. Adams stated, "Manhood is constructed in our culture, in part by access to meat eating and control of other bodies, whether it's women or animals." According to Adams, we cannot work for justice and challenge the oppression of nature without understanding that the most frequent way we interact with nature is by eating animals. Vegetarian ecofeminism combines sympathy with the analysis of culture and politics to refine a system of ethics and action. Our next concept of ecofeminism is the materialist ecofeminism. Ecofeminism as materialist is another common dimension of ecofeminism. A materialist view connects some institutions such as labor, power, and property as the source of domination over woman and nature. There are connections made between these subjects because of the values of production and reproduction. This dimension of ecofeminism may also be referred to as social feminism, socialist ecofeminism, or Marxist ecofeminism. According to Caroline Merchant, social ecofeminism advocates the liberation of women through overturning economic and social hierarchies that turn all aspects of life into a market society that today even invades the womb. Ecofeminism, in this sense, seeks to eliminate social hierarchies which favor the production of commodities dominant by men over biological and social reproduction. Our last and final concept of ecofeminism is the spiritual or cultural ecofeminism. Spiritual ecofeminism is another branch of ecofeminism and is popular among ecofeminist authors such as Starhawk, Rian Eisler, Carol J. Adams, and more. Starhawk calls this an earth-based spirituality, which recognizes that the earth is alive, that we are interconnected, as well as a community. Spiritual ecofeminism is not linked to one specific religion, but is centered around values of caring, compassion, and nonviolence. Often, ecofeminist refers to more ancient tradition such as the worship of Gaia, the goddess of nature and spirituality, also known as Mother Earth. Wicca and paganism are particularly influential to spiritual ecofeminism. Most of these covens demonstrate a deep respect for nature, a feminine outlook, and an aim to establish strong community values. In the book Radical Ecology, spiritual ecofeminism has also been referred to as cultural ecofeminism. According to Merchant, cultural ecofeminism celebrates the relationship between woman and nature through the revival of ancient rituals centered on goddess worship, the moon, animals, and the female reproductive system. In this sense, cultural ecofeminism tends to value intuition, an ethic of caring, and human nature interrelationships. With this, we come to our next topic, which is the critics of ecofeminism. Various feminist scholars, such as Cecile Jackson, Janet Bale, Meera Nanda, and Beena Agarwal, have pointed out this ecofeminist perspective is ethnocentric, essentialist, blind to class, ethnicity, and other differentiating cleavages, ahistorical, and neglects the material sphere. It is taken as self-evident that any harm to nature harms women equally, since women are seen as closer to nature than men. None of the ecofeminist literature attempts to establish this linkage through concrete evidence or strong argument. What these arguments seem to overlook is that concepts of nature, culture, and gender are historically and socially constructed and vary across and within cultures and time period. These essentialism presents women as a homogeneous category both within countries and across nations. It fails to differentiate among women by class, race, ethnicity, and so on. One of the most famous Indian critics of ecofeminism is Vandana Shiva. One would tend to categorize her work with the ecofeminist of the radical mood, but her critique of the entire development model and its effect on the environment places her more among the ecofeminist of the socialist framework. Critics of modern science and technology as a Western, patriarchal, and colonial project, which is inherently violent and perpetuates this violence against women and nature. Pursuing this model of development has meant a shift away from traditional Indian philosophy, which sees Prakriti as a living and creative process, the feminine principle from which all life arises. Under the garb of development, nature has been exploited mercilessly, and the feminine principle was no longer associated with activity, creativity, and sanctity of life, but was considered passive and as a resource. This has led to the marginalization, devaluation, displacement, and ultimately the dispensability of women. The Chipko movement is, however, an example that shows that women are not just born to be oppressed, but they also have the power to change. The Chipko movement that took place in the early 1970s, it depicted that they wanted to protect and generate forest in the Garhwal Himalayas. Through her analysis, Shiva points out the critical links between the different development perspectives, the process of change brought about by the development and its impact on the environment, and the people dependent on it for their subsistence. Further, she argues with Maria Mais that whenever women have protested against ecological destruction or nuclear annihilation, they were aware of the connections between patriarchal violence against women, other people, and nature. These movements were informed by the ecofeminist principles of connectedness, wholeness, interdependence, and spirituality, in opposition to capitalist patriarchal science that is engaged in disconnecting and dissecting. However, there were various critiques of Vandana Shiva. Shiva's analysis relates to the study of rural women in northwest India, but she tends to generalize her analysis to cover all third world women. Shiva seems to presuppose a society that is democratically organized, where people own sufficient land to survive on its produce. She seems to treat caste factors and political options as non existent and neglects the realities of hierarchy, subordination, patriarchy, and violence within traditional, tribal, and the peasant communities. The notions of Shakti and Prakriti are posed as representative of Indian philosophy as a whole. However, the feminine principle is largely expressed in Hindu terms, which are close to Sankhya philosophy, which is mainly popular in the north. The implications of feminine principle for Dalits, tribals, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and other minority communities was a big question. Shiva does not analyze religious control over women when she discusses the Shakti aspects of religion. We come to a second quiz. What are the two initial branching of ecofeminism? The options are A. Radical and cultural, B. Radical and materialist, C. Vegetarian and materialist, and D. Cultural and spiritual. Yes, the answer is radical and cultural. We can summarize this entire lecture in the hope that we went through all the important points concerning what is ecofeminism, how the term came to be coined, what was the origin of ecofeminism, what are the various concepts of ecofeminism, which included materialistic ecofeminism, vegetarian ecofeminism, cultural ecofeminism, and thus from there we went to how Vandana Shiva has a critical opinion about the ecofeminism globally as well as on the Indian version. Thank you.